All right, let's dive into something you probably talk about every day without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Talking about the weather. We've got this whole stack of sources here that reveal how much is actually going on beneath the surface of those like everyday conversations. You ready?
Absolutely. I'm fascinated by
One of
this.
the things that really jumped out at me was how weather talk is like this universal icebreaker. A simple, nice day, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the source kind of goes deeper and says it's especially crucial for mastering conversational English. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's fascinating how in English-speaking cultures, weather talk isn't just about just exchanging information. It's this whole social ritual.
Okay.
Um, it like signals a willingness to connect, to find some common ground. Think about, those awkward silences we all kind of dread.
Oh, yeah.
Weather talk is like this safe, neutral way to fill them,
Mm.
to, ease into a more meaningful conversation.
So it's not just what you say, it's the fact that you are saying something at all. It's kind of like an unspoken rule,
Yeah,
almost.
exactly. Yeah, shows you're open to interaction, and the source really dives into the vocabulary too, which can make those interactions even richer,
Yeah.
much more.
It goes way beyond sunny and cloudy, right? I
Yeah,
was I was struck by words like blustery or drizzly. They paint such a vivid picture.
and that's key. That's key here is that using more descriptive language
Hmm.
really elevates your conversational game
Right.
instead of just stating the obvious. You're inviting the other person to experience the weather with you. It shows you're paying attention, that you're going beyond that surface level,
Hmm.
and that can make you a more engaging and memorable conversationalist.
And then there are the idioms, like raining cats and dogs is so wacky, yet everyone understands it. Why do you think idioms play such a big role in weather talk?
I think it's because idioms, they inject color and personality into a conversation.
Okay.
It's raining cats and dogs. That's much more evocative than just saying heavy rain, right? But what's really interesting is how they reflect shared cultural experiences and understanding.
Uh,
Using them signals that you're in on the joke, that you're part of the cultural club,
mhm.
which can really help you connect with native English speakers.
It's like a secret handshake, but with words.
Ah,
So understanding these idioms isn't just about memorizing phrases; it's about tapping into the culture behind them.
right. And that's where things get really, really interesting because some idioms have really fascinating origins. Did
Hmm.
you know that save for a rainy day, meaning to prepare for difficult times, might come from a time when people literally relied on rainwater collected in barrels for survival?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
It's like each idiom tells a little story.
Mhm.
So by using them, you're not just speaking English. You're sharing a piece of history and culture.
Exactly, and that can make you a much more captivating communicator. Instead of
Yeah.
just conveying information, you're sparking curiosity. You're creating a shared moment of discovery.
I love that. But it's not all fun and games with idioms, right? There's also a more formal side to weather talk, like understanding forecasts or expressing concern about, dangerous conditions.
Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
imagine you're traveling and the forecast mentions patchy fog. You need to know what that means practically. Like, will it affect your flight, your drive?
Mm.
Mastering this kind of weather talk shows you can navigate everyday situations effectively.
So it's about being able to adapt your language depending on the context. Casual conversation might call for an idiom, but a
Hmm.
serious situation requires clear, precise language.
Precisely. And that adaptability is a hallmark of fluency. It shows that you're not just, speaking English. You're thinking in English. You're responding to nuances.
Wow, we've already uncovered so much. Who knew that weather talk was so multi-layered?
And we're just getting started. There's a whole other dimension to explore,
Yeah,
the way weather affects us psychologically.
that's right. We're going to dive deep into that in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned to learn how sunshine, rain, even the length of days can impact our moods, our behavior, even our decision making.
It's going to be fascinating.
Welcome back. We've been exploring how surprisingly deep something as simple as weather talk can be.
Yeah.
And prepping for this, I realized how often weather gets used metaphorically, not just in everyday chat, but in books, songs, even art.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
What's fascinating is how weather imagery adds um, adds depth and meaning to storytelling. Think about a stormy night in a novel.
Yeah.
It instantly creates suspense, even danger, or a bright sunny morning that often uh, symbolizes hope, a fresh start.
It's like a shortcut to setting the mood. I remember reading A Farewell to Arms by Hemingway, and there's this line: "The world breaks everyone, and afterward many are strong at the broken places, but those that will not break it kills. It kills the very good and the very gentle and the very brave impartially. If you are none of these, you can be sure it will kill you too, but there will be no special hurry."
Hmm.
The way he uses breaking as a metaphor, it hits you on a visceral level.
Exactly, and that's just one example. Weather metaphors they pop up everywhere. We talk about whether it's a storm to mean getting through a tough time, or someone having a sunny disposition to describe their personality. It shows how deeply ingrained weather is in our thinking, even when we're not literally talking about the weather.
So it's like weather becomes this language we use to express abstract ideas or emotions, which makes me think about how I personally use weather expressions. If I'm in a good mood, I might say I'm feeling bright and sunny today, or if things are going wrong, it's a real downpour of bad luck.
That's a great observation. We project our internal states onto the weather, almost like a reflection of how we're feeling. But what's even more interesting is how these metaphors can vary depending on individual experiences and cultural backgrounds.
So the same phrase could have totally different meanings depending on who's saying it and where they're from.
Precisely. Imagine someone saying it's a cold day in hell. Someone from a hot climate might find that amusing, even ironic, while someone from a cold climate might feel the full weight of that expression's negativity.
It's a reminder that even though we're all talking about the weather, we might not be speaking the same language, metaphorically speaking.
Right, and that's where things get really nuanced because understanding those cultural and personal differences is key to effective communication.
Yeah.
It's not just about knowing the words; it's about understanding the subtext, the layers of meaning beneath the surface.
Which makes me wonder, are there any specific examples of how cultural differences play out in weather talk?
Absolutely. Think about the concept of rain. In some cultures, it's seen as a blessing, a symbol of fertility and abundance. But in others, it might be associated with hardship or sadness. So if you're chatting with someone from a different culture, being sensitive to those nuances can make a big difference in how your message is received.
So weather talk isn't just about making small talk. It's about being culturally aware and sensitive to those subtle differences in perception.
Exactly. And that sensitivity can open up new levels of understanding and connection. Which brings us to another fascinating aspect of weather's impact, how it affects us psychologically.
Yeah, we touched on seasonal affective disorder earlier, but are there other ways, maybe less obvious ways, weather can influence our moods and behavior? Like, do sunny days, do they really make people happier?
There's actually a lot of research on this. Studies have shown that sunshine can boost serotonin levels in the brain,
Hmm.
which is linked to feelings of happiness and well-being. But it goes beyond mood. Some research suggests that sunny weather can even enhance creativity and problem-solving abilities.
So next time I'm feeling stuck on a project, maybe I should head outside for some some sunshine. I'll have to try that. But what about the flip side? How do things like rain or gloomy weather, how do they affect us?
Well, while sunshine might boost serotonin, cloudy days can sometimes lead to lower levels of dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with motivation and reward. This can result in feelings of fatigue, lower energy levels, and even difficulty concentrating.
So there's actually a scientific basis for feeling a bit a bit sluggish on a gray day. It's not just in my head, but I wonder if weather can impact things like mood and concentration. Does it also affect our decision making?
That's a great question, and one that researchers are actively exploring. There's some evidence suggesting that weather can subtly influence our choices
Right.
from what we buy to how we perform on certain tasks. For example, one study found that stock traders tend to make riskier decisions on sunny days, perhaps due to increased optimism and confidence.
Wow, that's fascinating. So even something as seemingly objective as financial decision making can be swayed by the weather. It really uh, makes you think about how deeply intertwined we are with the natural world.
And that connection goes even deeper than you might think. There's a whole field called biometeorology that studies the effects of weather on living organisms, including humans. It looks at everything from how temperature and humidity affect our physical health to how barometric pressure changes might influence our mood and cognitive function.
It's like we're constantly being influenced by the weather, even if we're not consciously aware of it. Which makes me think, if weather can have such a profound impact on us individually, what about on a societal level? Does weather affect things like crime rates or social behavior?
That's a brilliant question, and one that sociologists and criminologists have been investigating for decades. There's some compelling evidence suggesting that weather can indeed play a role in shaping social dynamics. For example, studies have shown that hot weather can lead to increased aggression and violence, while cold weather tends to be associated with higher rates of property crime.
So it's not just about personal moods and choices. Weather can actually influence the way entire communities behave. It's incredible how something we often take for granted can have such a widespread impact.
It's a reminder that we're part of a complex ecosystem,
Hmm.
and understanding those connections can help us navigate the world more effectively. So the next time you're chatting about the weather, remember that you're not just exchanging pleasantries. You're tapping into a powerful force that shapes our lives in countless ways.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the social nuances of weather talk to its psychological and even societal impacts. But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to explore: how weather can influence our health and well-being in very specific ways. And that's what we'll be diving into in the final part of our deep dive. So stay tuned to discover the surprising ways weather can affect our physical and mental health.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into talking about the weather. We've gone from small talk to idioms, even touched on how weather shapes storytelling in our moods. But now let's get into how it directly affects our health.
Yeah, what's often overlooked is that weather isn't just something we experience; it's something our bodies react to,
Yeah.
sometimes in very profound ways.
We talked about seasonal affective disorder earlier, but are there other, maybe less obvious ways weather impacts our well-being? Absolutely. Think about temperature extremes. Heat waves, for example, aren't just uncomfortable. They can be dangerous, especially for the elderly or those with certain health conditions. Heat stroke is a real concern, and even milder heat stress can exacerbate existing problems like heart disease.
So it's not just about staying hydrated. It's about understanding how heat physically stresses the body. What about the cold? Aside from the obvious risks like hypothermia, are there subtler effects?
Cold weather can actually impact our immune systems. Studies have shown that cold temperatures can suppress our immune response, making us more susceptible to viruses and infections. This might be why we tend to see more colds and flu during the winter months.
That makes sense. Our bodies are working harder just to stay warm, leaving less energy to fight off bugs. It's like an internal tug of war. Are there any weather conditions that are particularly tricky for people with specific health issues?
Definitely. People with respiratory conditions like asthma, for example, often find their symptoms worsen in humid weather. High humidity can make it harder to breathe, uh, triggering wheezing and coughing.
Yeah.
Similarly, changes in barometric pressure, which often accompany storms, can trigger migraines in some people.
So it's not just about knowing the forecast. It's about understanding how those conditions might personally affect you. It's almost like weather becomes another factor to consider in managing your health.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just reacting to the weather. Proactively using weather information can actually improve our well-being. For instance, if you know pollen counts are high, you can take steps to minimize allergy symptoms. Or if you're prone to heat exhaustion, you can adjust your outdoor activities accordingly.
It's about being weather-wise,
Yeah.
not just weather aware. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway you want to leave our listener with?
I think the most important thing is to appreciate the profound connection between weather and our well-being. It's not just something happening out there; it's something happening in here, affecting our moods, our behaviors, even our health. And by understanding that connection, we can navigate the world more thoughtfully, making choices that support our well-being, no matter the forecast.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We've learned so much about the surprising complexity of talking about the weather, and I hope you've gained some new insights too. Until next time, stay curious and maybe even try using some of those weather idioms in your next conversation. You might be surprised by the connections you create.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're diving into something that you might think is super basic, talking about the weather in English.
Right.
But we're going to go way beyond nice day, huh? You want to be able to actually have a real conversation about it, and we're here to help you do just that.
Absolutely.
So we've got a whole bunch of articles and research here, and honestly, it's a lot more interesting than I thought it would be.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It turns out that the way we talk about the weather can actually tell us a lot about English-speaking cultures.
It really does. It's such a common thing, starting a conversation with the weather.
Right.
And I think we often just kind of overlook how important it is culturally.
So why is it that English speakers in particular seem to be so obsessed with weather chat?
Well, one theory is because of our, let's say unpredictable weather patterns.
Yeah.
You never really know what you're going to get here.
Right.
So it's always a relevant topic, but it goes deeper than that. It's like a social glue, especially in Britain. It's this safe, neutral topic that helps us navigate those kind of awkward, initial social interactions without getting too personal too quickly.
So instead of like jumping right into deep philosophical debates at the bus stop,
Exactly.
we're bonding over a shared complaint about the rain.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see that. But I've also heard that this whole obsession with weather small talk is not as universal as we might think.
That's very true. What we might consider, polite chit-chat in one culture could be seen as, well, just plain boring in another.
Right.
Like in some cultures, jumping straight into business or personal matters is totally fine.
Interesting. It makes you realize how even something as basic as talking about the weather can actually have all these hidden cultural assumptions.
Oh, absolutely.
But let's say you are in a situation where weather chat is the norm. How do you go beyond just the obvious and make it a bit more interesting?
Well, one way is to really pay attention to the language that you're using. Instead of just saying, it's cold, you could say, there's a real bite in the air today. Or even, it's chilly enough to freeze the brass monkeys off a ship.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Freeze the brass monkeys. I've
Yeah.
definitely heard that one before, but I never really thought about what it actually meant.
Yeah, so it's actually a naval term. It refers to the cannonballs on ships, which were stacked on these brass structures called monkeys. And in really cold weather, the monkeys would contract, causing the cannonballs to fall off.
Wow, that's a great story. So you're not just talking about the weather, you're actually sharing a little bit of history or culture as well.
Exactly. And that can make your conversation much more engaging and memorable.
For sure. So now that we know why it's so important, let's talk about how to make our weather talk stand out. What are some tips for going beyond those basic descriptions?
Well, I'd say it starts with the words you choose. Like instead of just saying rain, you could say drizzle, downpour, or even it's bucketing down. Or, if it's humid, instead of just stating the fact, you could say it feels close or sticky.
Right, and I imagine regional variations can add some flavor too.
Oh, absolutely.
I've heard people in some parts of England say it's spitting to describe light rain.
Exactly. And those regionalisms are fantastic for connecting with people on a local level because it shows that you're paying attention to the nuances of their, particular way of speaking.
It's like you're in the know.
Exactly.
So it's about being specific and kind of evocative with your language.
Right.
But what about responding to other people's weather comments?
Right.
Sometimes I find myself just kind of agreeing or repeating what they said, and it feels a little bit flat.
Yeah, that's a common challenge. One strategy is to build on their comment, adding your own observation or opinion. Like if someone says, "Lovely day, isn't it?" You could say, "It is, makes you want to be out in the garden." Or if they mention the heat, you could say, "It's almost too hot for me. I'm more of an autumn person."
Ah, so you're adding a little personal touch to keep the conversation going?
Yeah.
And maybe revealing a bit about yourself in the process.
Exactly, exactly. And you can also use weather comments as a springboard to other topics. So, for example, if someone mentions the sunny weather, you could then start talking about your plans for the weekend or, maybe a recent hiking trip or even just like your favorite summer memories.
So it's like using the weather as a jumping off point to get into those more meaningful conversations.
Exactly. It's all about finding those natural connections and transitions. And don't forget humor. A well-placed joke, or a witty remark about the weather can really lighten the mood.
Okay, now we're talking.
Mm.
I love a good weather-related pun. But I imagine there's a fine line between being funny and being inappropriate.
Oh, absolutely. You always want to be mindful of your audience and the context. What's hilarious with friends might not go over so well in a more formal setting.
Right, read the room.
Exactly. But also, don't be afraid to let your personality shine through. Weather talk, when it's done well, can be a really charming and engaging way to connect with other people.
This is great. We've covered so much already. We talked about the cultural significance of weather talk, how to use really vivid language, regional variations, and even a bit of humor.
And that's just the beginning. There's a whole world of idioms and expressions that we can dive into.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I'm excited to talk about some idioms.
Yeah, let's do it. Idioms are like these little windows into the soul of a language.
Yeah.
They can be a little tricky for English learners, but once you start using them, your English is going to sound so much more natural and expressive.
Yeah. I'm all for adding a little flair to my language, but I have to admit I sometimes feel a bit hesitant to use idioms.
Uh-huh.
What if I get them wrong or use them in the wrong context?
Oh, yeah, that's a valid concern. Even native speakers mix them up sometimes.
Right.
I think the key is to start with the ones that feel comfortable to you and then gradually incorporate more as you gain confidence.
Some baby steps.
Exactly.
What are some good starter idioms for talking about the weather?
Okay, so we've already mentioned raining cats and dogs. That's a classic. But how about under the weather? It's a more subtle way to say you're not feeling well without being, too dramatic.
Right, like saying I'm a little bit off without going into all the, gory details.
Yeah,
It's definitely more polite than saying I'm feeling like death warmed up.
exactly. And there's brighten up someone's day, which isn't strictly weather related, but it's got that, sunny, positive connotation.
Oh, I use that one all the time.
Yeah.
It's so versatile. You can brighten someone's day with a compliment, a kind gesture, or even just a friendly smile.
Exactly. And then we have take a rain check, which is a polite way to decline an invitation without actually saying no.
Ooh, that's a good one to have in your back pocket for those awkward situations. Like if you're invited to a party, but you'd rather stay home and watch Netflix.
Exactly. You can say, "I'd love to, but I'm going to have to take a rain check." It implies that you're still interested, but just not available at that particular moment.
So handy. These are all great. I'm really starting to see how idioms can add this depth and humor to even like the most everyday conversations. But let's up the ante a bit.
Okay.
What are some more advanced or even unusual weather idioms that would really impress a native speaker?
Ooh, look where your head's at. How about chase rainbows? So it means to pursue something that's either unattainable or unrealistic.
That's beautiful. It's a little melancholy too, though, isn't it? Reminds me of that saying, if you chase two rabbits, you'll catch none.
Yeah, great connection. And then we have storm in a teacup, which describes a situation where people are getting super upset about something that's actually pretty trivial.
Oh, that's perfect for describing those workplace dramas where everyone's freaking out over a misplaced stapler.
Exactly. And to end on a more positive note, there's every cloud has a silver lining. A reminder that even in those tough situations, you can often find something good if you look for it.
It's a classic for a reason. It's so uplifting. It reminds us that even when it's, raining cats and dogs outside, there's still hope for sunshine.
Speaking of rain, have you ever heard the expression, "save for a rainy day"?
Of course. My grandma used to say that all the time.
Oh, nice.
About being financially prudent, right?
Exactly. It means to put some money aside for those unexpected expenses or emergencies.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that we can't always predict what life will throw at us, just like we can't always predict the weather.
That's a great point. And it brings us back to that fascinating connection between weather and culture. The way we talk about the weather, the idioms we use, it can reveal a lot about our values, our outlook on life.
I've never really thought about it that way before. It's like those everyday expressions, we use them without even thinking, but they actually carry all this, cultural baggage.
They do. And that's what I love about learning languages.
Yeah,
It's not just about memorizing words and grammar rules. It's about really understanding a different way of seeing the world.
it really is. This deep dive has definitely opened my eyes to the hidden depths of something that I used to consider just small talk.
Right.
And I feel like I've got a whole new appreciation for how powerful language can be to connect us, to entertain us, and even to teach us about ourselves.
I love that. And remember, the learning journey never really ends. There are always new idioms to discover, new cultural nuances to explore, and new ways to just, express yourself.
So true. Speaking of new ways to express ourselves, we've talked a lot about casual weather chat, but what about when we need to be a bit more formal or informative, like when you're discussing travel plans or you're checking the weather forecast?
That's a great point. In those situations, it's important to be able to understand and use specific weather terminology. For
Yeah.
instance, instead of just saying, it's going to rain, you might need to say something like, there's a 70% chance of precipitation this afternoon.
So you're shifting from that everyday language to a more precise and technical vocabulary.
Exactly. And you'll need to be familiar with terms like high pressure, low pressure, wind chill, and humidity levels.
Sounds like I need to brush up on my meteorology skills.
Well, you don't have to be a meteorologist or anything, but understanding those basics of weather forecasting can definitely make your life easier, especially when you're traveling or planning outdoor activities.
This is all so helpful. But I have to admit, I'm still a bit nervous about putting all this newfound knowledge into practice.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. It takes time and practice to feel comfortable using new language, especially idioms and technical terms. But don't let that stop you from trying.
You're right. The key is to start small, maybe just incorporating one new idiom or expression into my conversations each day.
Exactly, exactly. And just remember, the more you use it, the more natural it'll become.
So true. This has been such an incredible deep dive. Yeah. We've covered so much, from the cultural significance of weather talk to the nuances of using idioms and even technical terms. And I feel like I've gained a whole new set of tools to navigate the world of English conversation.
I'm so glad to hear that. And just remember, the best way to learn a language is to use it. So go out there and start chatting about the weather, no matter what it's doing outside.
It's amazing, isn't it? I thought we were just going to be talking about, clouds and sunshine and stuff.
Right.
But we've really gone so much deeper.
We have.
It's fascinating how something as simple as talking about the weather can be so connected to, culture and history.
Absolutely. And, even our own personal perspectives, too.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I've gained this whole new appreciation for just how complex and rich language can be.
And what's so cool is that language is constantly changing.
All right.
New words pop up, old expressions get new meanings, and the way we communicate is always adapting.
So it really is a lifelong learning process.
It absolutely is. And honestly, the more you kind of play around with language, the more you discover its power,
For sure.
to connect us, inspire us, even challenge us.
You've definitely challenged me today.
Okay.
I've had so many light bulb moments throughout this whole deep dive.
I love that.
I'm definitely going to be paying more attention to how people talk about the weather from now on.
I encourage you to. I think you'll be surprised by just how much you can learn just by listening.
I think so too.
Mm.
So is there one main thing that you hope our listeners will take away from this deep dive?
That's a great question. I think the biggest takeaway is that language is so much more than just a set of, rules and a list of words.
Right.
It reflects who we are, where we're from, and how we see the world.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It reminds me that every conversation, even if it's about something as basic as the weather, it can be meaningful.
Exactly. And I hope this deep dive has given our listeners the confidence to, really jump into those conversations.
I think it has. This has been such a cool journey.
Yeah.
I feel like I've unlocked a secret code
Uh-huh.
to understand not just English, but also the people who speak it.
And that's the ultimate goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
To bridge those cultural divides and connect with each other.
Well said. To all our listeners, we encourage you to keep learning, stay curious, and always be open to those unexpected conversations, even if they start with something as simple as beautiful day, isn't it?
Absolutely. Happy chatting, everyone. And until next time, keep exploring the amazing world of language and culture.